Hey guys, it's good to see you. This is the reading guide for reading guide part 4, number 7, 8, and 9, looking at investing primarily in this section. So, going over this reading guide here, starting with the first question of part 7. It says, what is compound interest? How does compound interest affect the importance of starting a saving and investment program at an early age? Well, if we go here and look at the book, they have a great part where they talk about how oftentimes we put a large value on what we have now as opposed to what we can have in the future. Even though we know we can have more in the future by investing, we don't really want, we would much rather spend it now sometimes. So it's important that we do start now, and here's why. They talk about this thing called compound interest. Okay, they say it's not really a miracle, but sometimes it feels that way. The results are truly amazing. Compound interest is simply earning interest on interest. So I talked about this in the lecture, but if you have $100 and you have a 7% return over a year, that $100 turns into $107. And then the next year, when you wait a year, and you, even if you didn't put any money in, you're still going to get more money than you got last year. You're not just going to get $7, okay? Because that $7 was 7% of 100. Now you're going to get 7% of 107, yeah? So you're going to get even more the next year, right? So you can kind of see how it's a snowball that keeps on rolling. So essentially, the earlier you start, the further up on the hill you are for your snowball, okay? Consider a simple example. Actually, I don't want to read this just yet. This is actually the next one. So let's go ahead and go to the next question. In the text, it gives an example of Roger giving up smoking and investing that money instead. If Roger invests that money that he saved from smoking, that $2,700, for 10 years with a 7% interest rate, which isn't unheard of, the text says he would accumulate how much? Well, let's just go ahead and read this example, because I was about to read it anyways. Consider a simple example. Assume a 16-year-old deciding whether or not to start smoking. This is an important choice for several reasons, health considerations being the most important. However, in addition to the health factor, there is a financial reason to not smoking. The average price of cigarettes in the United States is approximately $7.50 a pack. So if our teenager, let's call him Roger, decides against smoking, he will save $2,737.50 a year, assuming he would have smoked a pack a day. Suppose that instead of spending this amount on something else, Roger invested in a mutual fund that provides an annual rate of return of 7% in real terms, that is, adjusting for inflation. Note the 7% return is approximately equal to the rate of return of the S&P, the Standard & Poor's 500 index, an index of the 500 largest U.S. firms that mirrors the performance of the overall stock market. Fun fact, Tesla just got put onto the S&P 500, so that's exciting. As Exhibit 13 illustrates, Roger keeps this up for 10 years. When he is 26, he will have accumulated $37,823 from the savings of $27,000. Okay, one that is in fact good for Roger. Okay, so you can see here how he's only invested this amount, right? But by the end of how much it turns into, it turns into $37,000. Right? He only put in 27, but it turns into this much, right? So if he keeps on investing the same amount, look at how much he's put in over all this time, right? And why it's important to start early, because once he gets to 67, oh my goodness, that's turned into so much, okay? Very important. All right. Very important to start early, folks. What is diversification, and how does it put the large of large numbers to work for you? Let's go ahead and go to the next section here. You can reduce your risk through diversification, right? So stocks, if you just invest in one, it's going to go up and down. But if you put it into a large number of things, overall, they're all going to go up, right? So sure, some are going to lose value, but overall, you're going to increase, okay? You can reduce your risk through diversification, holding a large number of unrelated assets. Diversification puts the law of large numbers to work for you. While some of the investments in a diversified portfolio will do poorly, the others will do extremely well. The performance of the latter will offset that of the former, meaning that your gains of everything will be higher than your losses of the few items in your portfolio that don't do so well. And the rate of the return will converge toward the average. Woo! Okay, so essentially, you bet on all the horses, right? So that's what's happening here. Okay. The next question here is actually this third one here. What is double jeopardy? That's actually on this section as well, so I cannot forget that. this somehow got put down to number 9. It's actually part of number 8. Sorry. What is an equity mutual fund? Explain how it can help even small investors maintain diversity in their holdings of stock. Well, if we look down here, they talk about equity funds. So I want to start by actually talking about this one here. I should highlight this. Okay, this little sentence. Mutual funds can help investors diversify and reduce risk. Mutual funds simply combine the funds of groups of investors, right? You and whoever else is investing into that fund, and channels them into various categories of investments, such as stocks, which we sometimes call equities, bonds, real estate, or treasury bills. Treasury bills are just another kind of financial instrument that the government offers. Okay, thus there are a variety of mutual fund categories. An equity mutual fund channels the funds of its investors into the stock of many firms. These funds provide even small investors with an economical way to achieve diversity and reduce risk. The risks of stock market investments are substantially lowered if one continually adds to or holds a diverse portfolio of stocks over a lengthy period of time, say 30 or 35 years. Historically, when a diverse set of stocks has been held over a long time frame, the rate of return has been high and the variation in that return has been relatively small. Regular payments into an equity mutual fund holding a diverse set of stocks provide investors with a low-cost method of investing in the stock market. Okay, so what we're going to realize here is that you don't really have anyone, no one's really managing this, no one's really picking, sorry, we'll get to that later. So what's happening here is that you're just, with a whole bunch of other investors, pooling money into essentially a portfolio, okay? And these are relatively easy to get into, right? Because the companies already have the portfolio, the assets in them picked, either because it's going to be something that we'll call later, which is a index fund. We'll talk about those later, or maybe it's a managed fund. But whatever the case is, they have a portfolio, and you and a bunch of other people are just throwing money in it, and those assets, as they're being bought, they're gaining value, okay? So what is an equity mutual fund? It is you throwing money in to a pool of investments with others. And this helps you maintain diversity because those portfolios are going to be diversified. It's going to be a bunch of different stocks. So by investing in that one portfolio, you're actually investing into a whole bunch of different investments. Okay. So number 3 is, what is double jeopardy? I told you it's on this one, and they give a great example of double jeopardy. Okay. Some employers offer retirement programs that will match the purchase of your company's stock, or will allow you to purchase the company stock at a substantial discount. Such a plan makes purchasing the stock of your company attractive. If you have substantial confidence in the company, you may want to take advantage of the offer. After a holding period, typically 3 years, these plans will permit you to sell the purchased shares and use the proceeds to undertake other investments. As soon as you are permitted to do so, you should choose this option. Failure to do so will mean that you will soon have too many of your investment eggs in the basket of the company which you work, right? So think here, if instead of putting your money into an equity mutual fund, as we were just talking, which will have a whole bunch of different assets, you're instead putting your money into just one, right? So that's not diversifying, okay? And they go on to say this places you in double jeopardy. Both your employment and the value of your investments depend substantially on the success of your employer. So not only are you betting your future retirement on this one company stock, right, this company that you work for, you're also betting your current income, right? So that's 2 things are going to be wiped out if the company goes under, right? So you should diversify for the sake of your retirement, but you should also make sure that you are selling those off, because you don't want to also, when you're out of income, also be like, oh man, shoot, my whole entire retirement's wiped out now, right? Don't put yourself in this position, okay? What is the random walk theory of stock prices? That moves us into number 9, investment. Okay, as we're talking about how to invest. Well, economists, most of them accept the random walk theory. According to this theory, current stock prices reflect the best information that is known about the future state of corporate earnings. And guys, we don't have a crystal ball, right? It's just our best information and our best interpretation of that information. There's plenty of information that we just don't have yet. I have no clue what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay, the health of the economy. So information that is known about the future state of corporate earnings, the health of the economy, and other factors that influence stock prices. Therefore, future changes of stock prices will be driven by these surprise occurrences. things that people do not currently anticipate. By their very nature, these factors are very unpredictable. If they were predictable, it would already be reflected in the current stock prices, right? So everything we know that's going to change the current stock price is already factored into the current stock price, right? If people think that a stock is going to get lower in the future, if that information becomes available, the stock is going to lose some value, right? So that's kind of everything that could be known about a stock is kind of already included in the price of a share of a company. Okay. What is the difference between managed equity mutual funds and an index equity mutual fund? I told you we would get here, so here we are. Okay. So, there's these two things here they talk about, okay? There are two broad categories of equity mutual funds, managed funds and equity funds, indexed funds. A managed equity mutual fund is one in which an expert, the fund's portfolio manager, some head honcho, economics, finance guy, decides what stocks will be held and when they will be bought and sold. The fund manager is almost always supported by a research staff that examines both individual companies and market trends in an effort to identify those stocks that are most likely to do well in the future. The manager seeks to pick and choose the stocks holdings of the fund in a manner that will maximize the fund's rate of return, right? So they're trying to, even though, economists accept this random walk theory, they're like, okay, but what is the market undervalue, right? What companies, is there any information that we can find that gives us an advantage over what everyone else knows, that we can pick and choose the right stocks, and then, because we're picking and choosing the right stocks, we have high returns and people are going to invest in us, okay? That's what their idea is. Because, of course, these people, if you're getting higher returns through them, you're also going to pay them some fees, right? Maybe you give them 0.5% of your earnings, okay? However, there is a second type of fund, an indexed equity mutual fund. This merely holds stocks in the same proportion as their representation in broad indexes of the stock market, such as the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Very little trading is necessary to maintain a portfolio of stocks that mirrors a broad index. Neither is it necessary for index funds to undertake research evaluating the future prospects of companies. And guys, I'm going to ask you this question here, and I want you to answer it. Maybe pause the video and think about it. But if there's no expert picking and choosing, if it's them just putting top 500, throw it in, which one's going to be cheaper? Which one requires more work on their end? It's going to be the one where they're picking and choosing stocks, right? They have to do research, whereas with the indexed equity funds, right, in a managed fund, they're picking and choosing stocks. But an indexed equity fund, they're saying, hey, top 500 companies, we'll invest in those. There's no picking and choosing. So the fees that you'll pay with an indexed equity fund are actually much, much lower, okay? Neither is it necessary for index funds to undertake research evaluating the future prospects of companies. Because of these two factors, the operating costs of index funds are substantially lower, usually 1 to 2 percentage points lower than those of managed funds. As a result, index funds charge lower fees, and therefore a larger share of your investment flows directly into the purchase of stock, right? So you're paying less fees instead. Your money, instead of going towards paying the fees, it's going to buying more investments, okay? So, guys, that is all we have for this reading guide. I hope you find it useful. I hope you can use this to do better on the quiz that is coming up. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you when I see you. Adios.